yeah, so the realization that changed it all for me. And so we're going to talk about willingness today, about trade-offs, about how you can tell if you are moving from a disempowered place of risk avoidance when it comes to whatever your dreams, desires, and soul goals are, right? So take a minute to think about, what am I actively working towards right now? Like, what is my dream? What is my vision? What desire am I actively pursuing right now? Like, what are my goals right now, right? Because this whole conversation is going to help you identify, am I actually moving from a disempowered place of avoidance, or am I moving from that empowered place where I'm actually running towards the things I want to experience, where I'm running towards my desires, dreams, and goals, all right? I'm just going to share from my personal experience, and I'm going to use my business as the example today. So when I first started building my business, I was really treating it as a hobby. It was a very, it was a very charged kind of experience, because I think this happens for a lot of us when we are pursuing something that is written on our heart, or something that is just such a deep, deep desire for us. There's a lot of like vulnerability in that, right? And so for me, pursuing my business was very sacred, but it was also very scary and vulnerable. And so when I first started, I was treating it in such a way, I was like really doing everything in my power to keep myself safe, to avoid all uncomfortable situations that came along with it. And so it was very much, me treating it as a hobby meant that it was very much kind of underground, right? I was not willing to like tell anybody about it, which of course, if you're running a business, that doesn't work, does it? Like, if I'm not out there telling people that I have a business, if I'm not out there selling my offers, if I'm not out there supporting people or explaining to people how it is I would like to support them, right? If I'm not even telling the world that this business exists, how is anyone going to know, and how is it ever going to be thriving or impactful or successful or what have you, right? Of course. So I was really treating it as a hobby, and that was coming from that disempowered space where I wanted to avoid all of the uncomfortable like vulnerability and feelings of like being seen, right? And of course, none of that worked. Like, none of that worked for me. And so at some point I realized, I can't keep treating this like a hobby. If I want other people to take me seriously, if I want, I even thought like, well, if I want the universe to take me seriously as a co-creator, like I need to take this seriously, and I need to take my dream and my goal of having a business seriously. And so, in the very beginning, when I was treating it as a hobby, I literally just didn't tell people about it, which is just so silly, because if you want a business, you need to have clientele, you need to have an audience, you need to have people that, you need to find the people that are ready for the service you provide, right? And so when I was treating it as a hobby, if there was ever a social, my husband's like a social butterfly, so I feel like we're always meeting new people, and he's always taking me to social events. And so in those situations, whenever someone asked me, like whenever I was meeting someone new and they asked like, a very normal question is like, hey, what do you do for a living, or what do you do for work? I always answered, because I wasn't traditionally employed at the time. I was building the business in secrecy. I would always answer with, oh, I'm unemployed, or I'm a homemaker. And I just that just shut down the conversation, right? I didn't have to be at all visible or vulnerable in the truth of what I was doing. I didn't have to expose any of that, that deep, deep desire of mine. And that was really just me opting out, that was me opting out from having to navigate the uncomfortability of just being visible and vulnerable, right? Of being truthful. The visibility and vulnerable of being truthful, right? Now, I just want to say, we don't owe anyone our visibility and vulnerability, right? But I wanted, like deep down, I knew and I wanted the exposure and the visibility, because deep down I wanted an impactful, thriving, and successful business, right? It was just that I was avoiding all of the potential risk and avoiding all of the uncomfortability that comes along with that, right? And so when I realized I have to take this seriously, that's when I realized I have to start owning my desire. I have to start owning my dream. I have to start owning my goal of building a business. And that starts with me being willing to move through the discomfort of and all of the complexity and nuance that comes along with owning a business, right? So I decided I have to start being more vocal, online, of course, because that's where I market mostly, but that felt kind of safe, because at least online I wasn't dealing with a one-on-one personal interaction, right? So I kind of started with the marketing, with being more vocal and visible online about what I do and my services that I provide, and all of that stuff. But I realized, okay, like now you got to take it to the next level. Like you got to take that seriousness and that owning your desire and that empowered, like, this is what I'm here to do and this is what I'm creating for myself and this is what I'm pursuing. Like you got to take that into the personal space. And so you guys, I decided, like, I'm not going to tell people that I'm unemployed or that I'm a homemaker. I'm going to tell people that I am building a business. And that was fucking terrifying for me. Like, that was truly, like, terrifying. Like, I mean, so emotionally charged, you guys, that it brought me to the brink of tears, or sometimes resulted in tears. So emotionally charged that my voice would quiver, so emotionally charged that I started dreading social situations, especially meeting new people, because I knew that question would come up. I knew people would ask me, hey, what do you do for a living, or what do you do for work? And I was going to have to respond, and I was going to have to take new action. I was going to have to respond in alignment with who it is I wanted to be, who it is I was choosing to become, and not opt out because it was uncomfortable, right? And so when I say it was truly terrifying, like, I mean it. But this is the willingness that's required and the trade-offs that we have to make peace with. Because on one hand, I could trade all of the business and just go get, a regular or a traditional 9-to-5 job and, have people just fully accept, like, yeah, I do X, Y, Z, and then be like, yeah, cool, that's a normal job, cool. And like that be the end of the conversation. And I could create all of that. I could avoid all of the discomfort, right, of being visible and vulnerable, but I would be trading my dream. I would be trading the actual desire of mine. I would be trading all of my goals, right? And that was not worth it to me. And so the trade I made was, I am going to allow myself the growth opportunity to move through the discomfort, to sit in the discomfort, to be with the discomfort of being visible, of being vulnerable, of possibly, being questioned, right? And because it's worth it in the ultimate long-term vision for my dream of owning a business, right? You see what I mean? So like, there are trade-offs required, and these trade-offs are what create that opportunity for personal growth, for personhood cultivation, right? So pursuing your desires and dreams and meeting your soul goals in a way that feels good, in a way that is in alignment with who it is you truly want to be, it's going to require this kind of growth and transformation, right? And so I started telling people, like, I'm building an online business, and I totally downplayed it in many, many ways. I said that, but I still found ways to kind of like shut down the conversation and make it clear that I wasn't willing to elaborate. And sometimes if I was, for whatever reason, really uncomfortable or not in the right frame of mind, sometimes I still said I'm unemployed or I'm a homemaker, it just kind of depended on my energy at the time, right? So it was a really messy, sloppy transition from totally opting out to starting to tell people, or really just starting to be truthful, to be visible and vulnerable about what it was I was doing. But honestly, just that piece of starting to say like, well, actually I'm building an online business right now, that got easier and easier as I did it, right? The repeatability or the repetition of that and the practice of being in the discomfort and saying that out loud, that got easier with time. That got easier with repetition. And then the new dread, the new challenge for me was when people asked follow-up questions, right? So in the beginning, I was just saying that and then shutting it down so I didn't have to deal, so I could regulate, really, so that I could regulate my nervous system and my energy to that uncomfortable experience and be okay with it and make peace with it. And just be okay with being uncomfortable, be okay with being vulnerable, because I was willing to trade that, because for me, it was worth it ultimately in the long run, right? So then the new challenge, the next dreaded thing became when people started asking follow-up questions. And I was like, okay, the next step for me is to not shut down the follow-up question. It's to move through that next thing that's uncomfortable and, elaborate a little bit and be honest about what it is I do and where I see myself going. And again, we don't owe anybody this visibility or vulnerability, but if I wanted to take myself seriously, I had to be willing to sort of put myself on the line for my dreams and goals in that way, right? And I knew that I had to practice owning what I did, owning the fact that I was a business owner and owning the fact that I have a service that I provide, right? And so it was especially uncomfortable when I ran into people who didn't really have a spiritual lens through which they saw the world, because that is very much how, like, my business is has this spiritual lens and edge to it, and my spirituality is so sacred to me. And then it was especially hard as well when I ran into people who did not value or understand what coaching was all about and why anyone would hire a coach or want a coach or need a coach to help them pursue their dreams and desires, or help them with accountability, or help them with mindset work. Like, there are people that are just like, mindset, like, what is that, So it became especially challenging when I ran into those kinds of people, and I kind of had to, again, own my shit, own my outlook, own my perspective, own my dreams, own my desires, own, what it is I was stepping into and moving towards, right? And so, but again, through practice and repetition, that became easier. And so now for the most part, I'm pretty practiced and familiar. It's no longer uncomfortable on a regular basis. There are still times where the uncomfortability pops up. There are still social situations, or if someone questions me or something, that shakiness might come back a little bit. But for the most part, my new mode of being, or my new mode of operation, is this level of empowerment. Like, I know that I can handle that uncomfortability because I've done it. I've done a whole lot of fucking work to get to the point where I know now that I can reliably hold that. You know what I mean? So this is like the having versus holding. We all want to have the thing. We all want to have the outcome. We all want to have the results. But honestly, getting there requires this holding model. It requires cultivating the personhood that can hold space for all of the nuance, complexity, and discomfort that comes along with the outcome and the results, right? Those are the people who make it in a way that feels good for them, because not only have they achieved the tangible outcome or results, they've grown their skill set, they've grown their energy management, they've grown their peace, their self-trust, their self-respect, they're moving from an empowered place. So not only do you have the physical, tangible outcome of results, there's this whole internal growth and transformation process happening as well. You are not just getting the thing, you are stepping into a more expansive version of yourself, right? And so that's the that's what we really have to be willing to do. And again, it starts small, right? Like this was really an incremental process for me over a period of like 3 or 4 years. So that's how long it took me to get to where I am today. And it doesn't mean that you can't get there faster or whatever, but like that was just my personal process. And honestly, if I had had a coach or someone at the time, I think it would have gone faster. But yeah, this willingness to be with the discomfort, the nuance, and the complexity that comes along with your desire, dream, or goal. And being willing to be with and sit with that uncomfortability just little bit by little bit until it no longer is so emotionally charged, right? Like now it's not emotionally charged. My voice doesn't quiver. Like you guys, like literally tears, voice shaking, quivering, like on the verge of like making a fool out of myself in social situations because I couldn't handle my shit, right? Like that's where it started. And that's okay. I had to be that version of myself to step into this version of myself. You know what I mean? And so starting as small as necessary to work yourself into being, or to work yourself into being with the discomfort and regulating to it, showing and demonstrating to yourself that you can handle it. And in fact, that when you do it as a practice, it gets easier and easier and easier. And that confidence and that self-trust builds. And you're like, oh yeah, I do have the capacity to handle this. Is it uncomfortable as fuck? Yes. Like seriously, when I was at the point where the new Dreader challenge was people asking follow-up questions, it literally felt like someone was undressing me, like slowly zippering, like pulling a zipper down on like a dress or something and just like exposing all my most vulnerable parts and pieces. Like I hated the follow-up questions. I hated people like questioning what it was that I did and why someone would want that or need that or whatever, right? I just felt like, oh my God, right? But again, owning it, practicing making peace with the trade-off, with the uncomfortability. Again, remembering you don't owe anyone your visibility or vulnerability, okay? This was very much a personal choice on my part to start owning this and practicing owning it, right? And so, yeah, over time, it got easier and easier and easier to the point where I am now, where for the most part, it isn't an issue anymore. Like I said, every once in a while, the doubts and the insecurities still pop up, but I know that I can hold it, and I trust myself to hold it, and I trust myself to navigate through that uncomfortability and still take action from the empowered space of owning my shit, not take action from the avoidance, from the disempowered space of I have to avoid all the risk and all the stuff that feels uncomfortable and weird, right? And so that's the difference. The willingness, understanding the trade-offs, and the choice to make the trade that feels most pleasurable, that honors your desires, and where it is you want to go, and what it is you want to create, and who it is you want to become. You see? And like I said, I felt so exposed, I felt so vulnerable, I felt so fucking uncomfortable, and that didn't feel good. You know what I mean? In the heat of the moment, that felt bad. And so this goes to show how just because something doesn't feel good, just because something feels icky or feels bad, doesn't necessarily mean, that does not automatically mean that that's a wrong choice, or that that's a bad path, or that that's a wrong action step to take. It's kind of weighing the short-term discomfort with the long-term vision. Because if we are constantly, if we're constantly moving from that disempowered space of, we're like trying to be comfortable and trying to avoid all of the discomfort, trying to avoid all of the risk, trying to avoid all the vulnerability or whatever it is for you, you're sacrificing the long-term goal. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was what the trade-off looked like for me. That was what the willingness looked like for me. And for most of us, I think as soon as something starts to feel vulnerable or uncomfortable, we're like, this is bad. And so, our brain does the thing that it does, and it shuts it down, and it's like, this isn't going to work. But part of the having model is, again, that personal growth and development. It's building the skills to manage our energy, and to be with discomfort, to allow ourselves the human experience, all the complexity, nuance, and discomfort that comes along with being a creatrix, with creating and like pursuing our dreams, desires, and goals, right? And so, again, over time, I was able to be with the discomfort and not make myself wrong for it, and recognize that it really was more of a neutral situation. That my body, like my brain, is an extension of my body. And so just like my mind is like, oh my God, this is so scary, my body's having that physical emotional response in the nervous system that's like, oh my fucking God, this is so scary, right? But the familiar, like doing it repeatedly helped me regulate to that experience where it's no longer something so emotionally charged. It's absolutely something I can handle now. And now I have that skill. I know. And now, like, recognizing where it is I'm running from discomfort is so much easier. And I can go, okay, wait, this is where I'm doing that thing like I did when I wouldn't tell people that I'm building a business. So this is like the new level or the next step of standing in that uncomfortability and owning my shit and owning my desires, right? And so now it's so much easier to locate where I'm doing those things, and it's the whole experience is less charged now because I know that I can do it, because I've seen myself do it, because I've walked myself through it. And so that confidence and that self-trust and that empowerment is just like on a whole new level of normalcy, of normal operating modes of being and doing. That, yeah, it just gets easier every time we're breaking through a new sort of like ceiling for ourselves. So this is the willingness and the trade-off that's required, and this is how you can kind of identify where you might be running from risk, like avoiding, versus actually running towards the things you desire. And this is how you can start to kind of recognize what your baby steps are for regulating to the uncomfortable complexity and nuance that comes along with being the person that holds space for all of the stuff required to reach the goal or achieve the goal or have the thing or live the dream or whatever that is for you, right? And of course, if you need support in working through some of the mind steps or the action steps required for you to start running towards your desires and dreams instead of moving from that avoidance place, then book a free soul synergy session with me. We can talk about this stuff. We can build you out some action steps. We can build you out a little action plan. We can get you some goals so that you have like a framework and something to move off of, something that you can hold yourself accountable to, so that you can start moving the needle and seeing some of that change. Because again, it really is that internal piece of moving from the empowered space versus the disempowered space that's going to allow you to become the person you want to be, who has the thing, right? So book a free soul synergy session and we can talk about that. And I will upload this video because Instagram won't let me go live. So hopefully it gets up today, which is Tuesday, and I will see you guys around. Mwah.